Mauvier is a man wholly defined by the past. His childhood defines his approach to his relationships, religion, and his personal passivity. His past with the Hounds defines who he is for the vast majority of his supports and bond conversations, in regards to the mistakes he made while working alongside them, and the atonement he deems necessary for making up for those mistakes. Even his future is defined by his past. Mauvier does not allow himself to personally grow until his atonement for his past is completed. Atonement and passivity will be the central ideas guiding this analysis of Mauvier's character. Mauvier's time with the Hounds is the main root of his desire to atone, and perfectly displays how destructive being passive can be. As such, this will be the starting point of the analysis. Of particular focus will naturally be his relationship with Marnie, as well as Vale. We'll explore Mauvier's passive approach to his relationships with them during his time with the Hounds, before moving on to where that passive approach to life came from. This will allow us to look at his childhood and the relationships he had with his birth family, that would then go on to affect his relationships with his found family. The topic of his childhood will also let us explore Mauvier's somewhat stunted emotional state, and to finish off, we will cover Mauvier's atonement for his past, and how that affects his perception of his future. Now, this video is something of a companion piece to my previous analysis. It is by no means necessary for you to go watch that video, the video on the 4 Hounds. However, I will be making reference to some arguments I made in that video. You shouldn't be completely lost if you haven't watched that video, but it might help if you want to go and check it out. Now, with that said, to start, let us return to the subject of my previous analysis, since Mauvier's desire to atone is largely tied up in his relationship with the Hounds. I covered the relationship between Marnie and Mauvier in the analysis of the Hounds, but Mauvier's supports bring critical new dimensions to the discussion, at least from Mauvier's side. Mauvier's B support with Gregory reveals that Mauvier seemingly holds Gris and Zephyr both as being responsible for Marnie's death. Alone, this is not an especially interesting detail, but considering why Mauvier would hold the same contempt for Gris as he does for Zephyr, in regard to Marnie's death, proves surprisingly revelatory for Mauvier's feelings towards his quest for atonement. It would seem that even though Gris was just a passive bystander, Mauvier considers that to equate to complicity. It is a fair assumption for Mauvier to make, too. Gris neither attempts to stop Zephyr, nor does her murder of Marnie cause him to even remotely question her. In Mauvier's eyes, that makes him as guilty as Zephyr. This is consistent with how Mauvier talks about Lumera's death in his supports with Vander, wherein Mauvier apologizes for his part in Lumera's death. A part he did not play. Not literally, anyway. Lumera's death was entirely at the hands of Vale, and yet Mauvier considers himself to blame. Like Gris in Marnie's death, Mauvier likely views himself as being complicit, likely because it was Vale who killed Lumera. Despite being Vale's sworn knight, Mauvier is powerless against the abuse inflicted upon her by Zephyr and Sombron, only able to try and convince Zephyr to momentarily put off said abuse. But even then, based on Mauvier's post-battle dialogue, if you return to the Chapter 16 battlefield, Mauvier must have accepted that the mind-controlled Vale was not entirely a creation of abuse. Both here and in his battle dialogue with Zephyr in Chapter 23, Mauvier says that he did believe the Hounds to be acting justly. Abuse of Vale, therefore, seemingly included. As such, his passive acceptance of this, in his eyes, makes him just as responsible for Vale's actions as the mind-controlled Vale. Mauvier's failure to protect both Marnie and Vale are obviously crucial to his desire to atone for the past, but they do reveal another core aspect of Mauvier's character, one that he himself takes great issue with: his indecisiveness. Mauvier's inaction and lack of personal agency is a frequently repeated theme to many of his conversations. His lack of confidence in his decision-making is the subject both of his Leaf and Roy bond supports. His belief that his indecisiveness is what really killed Marnie is the subject of his bond supports with Corin and his supports with Gregory, and his inaction regarding Vale's safety is the subject of his bond supports with Lucina and Micaiah. When Mauvier says he wants to atone for the past, it is more than just his actions with the Hounds that he wants to make up for. It is all the things he did not do that truly burden him. Of course, his relationship with Marnie exemplifies this better than any other. His passive nature makes it so that he doesn't try and dissuade Marnie from going back to Zephyr, even though he himself cannot abide her treatment of the Hounds. In turn, his supports with Madeline show him trying to make up for all the things he didn't do for Marnie. Both their C and B supports have Mauvier heap praise onto Madeline in that vein. Although in their A support, Mauvier says that he does not look to Madeline for Marnie's forgiveness, which does tap into something that Mauvier addresses in his B support with Alear. This idea that his atonement is fundamentally selfish. After all, if Mauvier isn't looking for Marnie's forgiveness in Madeline, he can only really be praising Madeline to make himself feel better for his failures. It's an interesting dilemma that permeates all of Mauvier's actions for atonement. If his overall goal is to ease his own guilt and self-hatred, does that detract from the genuine good he does in the name of atonement? As for something geared more towards his relationship with Vale, another example of Mauvier's passivity is begun in his Pandreo supports, the C support specifically. Here, Mauvier tells Pandreo about his devotion to the Fell Dragon, even despite everything that has happened. However, his B support with Ivy directly contradicts this. With Ivy, Mauvier says that he is not a true believer. Without a doubt, he is being genuine with Ivy, as this is something that is addressed in other supports. His B support with Rosado has him call his time with the Fell Dragon's Church one of great suffering, as a blatant example. But I also do not think he is entirely lying to Pandreo either. The reason why being twofold. Most importantly, being Vale. Mauvier's continued devotion to the divinity of Fell Dragons is almost certainly a specific devotion to Vale's divinity. The second factor is a little more interesting, though. Continuing to worship the Fell Dragon is the easy choice for Mauvier. It offers the path of least resistance. It is another way his passivity manifests itself. In Mauvier's B support with Alear, he tells them that he stayed in the Fell Dragon's Church because of his desire for an easy, peaceful life. He willfully stayed with them, not because he was a believer, but because he thought that taking action by leaving may have jeopardized the peaceful life he wanted. The emptiness of his faith is explored much further in his supports with Anna, another set of supports in which he claims to have never been a believer. In their A support, Mauvier tells Anna that he would only pray because that was what he thought he should do. His participation was, and continues to be, passive. His prayers are empty. Perhaps all they serve to do is assure him that he may, one day, be able to live the peaceful life he wanted. It's only through talking with Anna that he learns that his prayers can be something greater. Anna teaches him to pray for others rather than to any specific god. This new way of thinking is a direct challenge to his passivity. Praying for the people he cares about fills those empty prayers with meaning, whilst also putting the ball in Mauvier's court, so to speak. These prayers aren't the sort that he should just turn up to scheduled prayer time with. They're the kind that he must make the conscious effort to make himself. Mauvier's passive approach to faith specifically, though, comes as a little surprise. He is, after all, in the very unfortunate position of having been failed by both dragon gods. Returning to his B support with Ivy, Mauvier tells her how he ended up in the Fell Dragon's church, despite not being a believer. Originally from Firene, he and his family did once worship the divine dragons, but after his father was killed by plague, they moved to Elusia, where he and his mother changed their religions. It wasn't long after arriving in Elusia, though, that his mother also died of disease, and he found himself in an orphanage run by the Fell Dragon Church. Neither faith could save his parents, neither Fell or Divine. If you've been failed by both of your gods, could there ever be real meaning in prayer to them? Furthermore, his childhood situation may have also influenced his passive approach to life. As a child, he would not have had a say in the changing of the family religion, nor would he have been involved in the decision to move to Elusia. And once he was placed in an orphanage run by a church, his religious autonomy would have all but vanished entirely. With no sense of control in his life as a child, he never learned to take control of his life as an adult. Mauvier's childhood was not exclusively comprised of suffering, though, and while his childhood experiences may have influenced some of his more negative traits, they also clearly informed some of his positive ones. Mauvier's supports with Saline make that clear in no uncertain terms. Starting in the C support, Mauvier requests that Saline help him to locate a specific hill in Firene. Their B support has him share with her some memories he has of this hill, memories of going on picnics with his parents. It's through recounting these stories that Mauvier stumbles upon the revelation that he tells Saline in their A support, that the hill never really mattered, and what was the most valuable about those memories were the people in them, the parents that he loved. By itself, it's a very quaint set of supports that allows Mauvier to enjoy a part of his past that has no real baggage attached. In the grander context of his character, though, this support being the only one to really explore his relationship with his parents is critical to his other family relationships. His relationships with the Hounds. Unlike the other three, Mauvier had generally positive experiences with his family, and as such, knows what a good family looks like. The fact that he is the only one to turn his back on the Hounds may be because of this. Unlike someone like Zephyr, whose only frame of reference for how family should be was Sombron, Mauvier actually had a loving family, and could eventually see that the Hounds were not one. However, it seems just as likely to me that Mauvier's relationship with his family also played a part in blinding Mauvier to the abusive relationships within the Hounds. The supports with Saline and both his battle conversations with Zephyr heavily suggest a longing for family. A longing that blinded him to Zephyr's treatment of the Hounds. In his bond supports with Marth, Mauvier attributes his Firenese upbringing as the reason why he treasures the people close to him, something he was taught by his birth family that he would go on to apply to his new-found family. Family is incredibly important to Mauvier, so it is a shame just how bad he is at communicating that to the people he cares about. This was something I covered quite extensively in the 4 Hounds analysis video, especially with regard to his relationship with Marnie, but his inability to express his emotions runs far deeper than just failing to communicate to the Hounds how much he cared about them. While it appears to be quite a silly example, his B support with Rosado captures the true depth of this perfectly. When Rosado is showing him all of these cute things, Mauvier can only really describe what it is he sees. He cannot describe cuteness because it is tied to an emotional response, something he does not know how to communicate. The fact that this is also the same conversation that establishes Mauvier's time at the Felldragon's church as a time of great suffering could imply that his inability to communicate or fully understand emotions is due to some sort of trauma there. Or it could simply be a part of his personality. In fact, his supports with Madeline somewhat lean into this as well. Much of the praise that Mauvier gives her, genuine as it may be, is very surface level. He praises her for physically completing tasks. There's a certain depth of emotion missing from his praise. The reason why doesn't matter so much as the fact that it is emotions that he struggles to understand, though seemingly mostly his own. His A-support with Celestia, for example, shows that he was perceptive enough to understand Zephyr's motivations for working with Sombron, and how her loneliness affected her. And yet he fails to fully comprehend how his desire to belong and his desire to be part of a family correlate. As I argued previously, these misunderstandings of emotion and failing to communicate all culminated in the death of Marnie, which ends up tying all of this back to Mauvier's need to atone. In theory, Mauvier's form of atonement is simple. After joining the Divine Dragon, he decides to dedicate his life to helping others, as opposed to not doing that as one of the Hounds. But Mauvier's belief that he has caused too much harm for him to ever fully atone for has a very prominent effect on how he carries out his atonement. Many of his Bond conversations cover how unrelenting Mauvier is in his single-minded pursuit of atonement, to such a degree that it's basically all there is to him. He has no hobbies, he doesn't take breaks, he always puts himself on the front lines. And it is something that he is aware of. He tells Rosado in their A-support that, as interested as he is in learning about cuteness, he cannot put his focus into anything else before the war is over. His supports with Amber show the true extent of this behaviour, their B support showing that he only stops to rest when he is physically incapable of continuing on without a break. But even then, when Amber can't take over Mauvier's duties due to some unforeseen circumstances, he keeps on working anyway. His single-minded selflessness is ultimately self-destructive. There are a couple of supports in which Mauvier reveals that he works so hard not just to atone for his past actions, but to be accepted by those he once fought against. His A-support with Amber is one such support, though it isn't his own actions that earn him the recognition of his new comrades. It's Amber's. Mauvier spends his nights doing good work, but work no one asked him to do. He solemnly stands guard and tries to push others away. By taking on more work for himself and lightening everyone else's loads, he ends up isolating himself from them. Amber is the one who actually tells people that Mauvier has been doing this work. He's the one who earns Mauvier his recognition. It's a perfect demonstration of how Mauvier's attitude towards his redemption is flawed. Not because he is failing to help others, but rather because he is isolating himself. A mistake he already made with Marnie. A mistake that he is trying to atone for. Similarly, in Mauvier's B support with Bunet, Mauvier starts to push him away after Bunet tries to help Mauvier directly. In their C support, Mauvier gives himself an uncharacteristic moment of reprieve when he stops by Bunet's garden. He enjoys the flowers Bunet is growing, potentially a nod to his Pyrenees heritage, and says that he will stop by again whenever he needs a rest. Come their B support, however, as soon as Bunet offers to cook for Mauvier, Mauvier puts his walls back up. It's charity that he cannot accept. As soon as someone tries to do something specifically for him, he pushes them away. Mauvier's atonement usually manifests itself in physical acts, typically of service, so he likely sees others doing the same for him as something he, as a man who needs to atone, is undeserving of. He says as much in his Sea Support with Alir, where he argues that he is unworthy of being praised for his work because he sees himself as a fundamentally bad person. Even with Vale, he puts his walls up. In both their supports and some of his Bond conversations, Mauvier describes his commitment to Vale as a duty, a description that immediately removes any notion of emotion that might motivate him to look after Vale. He is her knight, it's his duty to protect Vale. That's how he can rationalize it to himself anyway. Ike correctly recognizes, though, that Mauvier needs Vale just as much as she needs him, which does seem to be something that gets through to Mauvier. In his A Support with Vale, he does eventually call her his friend, something that him at the past, even before his quest for atonement, could not bring himself to do. This pairs well with the aforementioned A Support with Anna. Mauvier is certainly capable of making connections, it's just a matter of if he can allow himself to do so. In a sense, it's another way that his passivity haunts him. He can take action to protect the people he cares about, but he cannot bring himself to directly deepen his connections with them. As much as he does enjoy being alone to some degree, it is nevertheless a trait that facilitates his passivity. If he likes to be alone, he can be entirely passive in his relationships with others. The final crossroads for Mauvier's desire for atonement and his passivity is simply what comes next. Mauvier is so shackled to the past that he alone cannot fathom moving on from it. With his belief that he can never truly atone for the past, it is up to others to make him look forward, to open his eyes to the possibility of change. Both Rosado and Bunet express that he is capable of changing, but his A Support with Vanda takes this even further. Throughout all three of their supports, Vanda is supportive of Mauvier, though the time when Mauvier is most receptive to it is in their A Support, where Vanda directly tells Mauvier that he is on the right path, that he is a good man. It's a sentiment echoed by Alir in their A Support, where they reaffirm that Mauvier is a fundamentally good person, and his brief straying from that path has not rendered him irredeemable. These are conclusions that Mauvier cannot come to on his own. He needs the affirmations of others to even get him to consider that he may be redeemable. Sad though it may be that he views himself this way, the fact that he needs others to recognize this is another poignant reminder that his self-inflicted isolation is not the right way. There are more signs that Mauvier can accept his goodness too. His resolution with Roy that not every choice he has made was a mistake, his A Support with Lyndon where he is convinced that despite the past, he can live a worthwhile life, and most importantly is his A Support with Rafal. In Rafal, Mauvier sees someone just like him, someone who is desperate to find redemption through kindness in spite of their abrasive nature towards others. But this time, Mauvier doesn't have the luxury of being the passive party in need of a lesson. He has to be the one to teach it. And unlike all of his other supports, he does not default to negativity. He doesn't go on about how selfish their desire for redemption is, how meaningless their lives have been. He tells Rafal that yes, they can make a difference. What they're doing does matter. Unfortunate though it is that his self-loathing means that he cannot fully accept that about himself, it is clear that deep down, on some level, he knows that he can make a difference. So trapped in the past, Mauvier believes that his has been a life not worthwhile, that all he has done is make mistakes and cause suffering, that he is a bad person. However, his jealousy of Lynn's freedom speaks volumes about his nature. Lin is right to say that he does not understand what freedom means, because he is free. His natural goodness just doesn't let him see it. A bad person would not consider atonement for the past to be a duty that must be carried out. Mauvier's atonement was a choice that he made, because he is fundamentally good. A defiance of his passive self. It's another thing that Ike sees in him too. A bad person would not believe that they are a failure if they are enjoying themselves while others are out there suffering. Nor could a bad person ever possibly say that I cannot bear to see the weak suffer, knowing I might have the power to save them. The final note I want to leave this conclusion on is this. My favourite picture from the logbook. Picture can speak 1,000 words, and this one completely understands who Mauvier is. And there we have it! Another analysis over! Woo! Okay, make it awkward, why don't I? Yeah, hey, thank you for watching! I do have a bit of an outro, I know. Me having an outro? Not much this time, though. I don't have too much to say this time. So we'll get the big one right out of the gate now. The next one, Veil. It's gonna be a little bit later than I thought it would be. Specifically in the sense that it is at earliest gonna be like very late July rather than like mid-July. So I'd push that back to expecting that in August rather than July. I mean, this one alone, this took me way longer to actually get out than I'd anticipated. I mean, I'm pretty sure I said in the 4 Hounds video that I wanted this out in mid-April, and it's nearly May. So, yeah, a little slow on my part, I'm sorry. Yeah, this analysis, I quite enjoyed writing this one, actually. I did it somewhat purposefully. I did it a bit different to how I did the other ones that are very much about supports. I wrote this one very much in the style that I wrote the 4 Hounds analysis. You know, sort of as a little tip of the hat to that video. I don't know, in a way I feel like I kind of would have preferred to go back to the saline style for this one, where I pull supports apart a little bit, but at the same time, funnily enough, I think that Mauvier's most interesting supports are actually his Bond supports. Like, these little one line he says back, I think are so interesting in Mauvier's case. I think they're some of the most interesting ones in the entire game, to be honest. And I think, you know, in a way it's because Mauvier is functionally a Camus, right? And so many Fire Emblem protagonists have seen people like him, and they can give him advice and push him to change in ways that, you know, you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So it's very interesting, actually. Yeah, I do have some other thoughts. There actually weren't that many things that I cut out from this one. They were really things that were just like, would have been one sentence. And it's like, it kind of just like breaks the flow. And I feel like there were a couple of things in here that I wanted to say that didn't like quite flow correctly. You know, it is what it is. I always come to this sort of conclusion where it's like, I can't get on this forever to make this like perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. I'm never going to be satisfied. I'm too much of a perfectionist and insecure to ever like fully get it down. Yeah, no, there are very few things that I cut from this one entirely. It was pretty much just this little note on revenge, wherein Vander's support, like, he immediately assumes the Vander would want revenge against him because of his, him believing that he has a part to play in Lumera's death, which I think is an interesting parallel to his bond support with Sigurd, where he talks about wanting to get revenge for Marnie. So it's like, oh, because he thinks that way, he expects other people to think that way as well. But yeah, I couldn't really think of a way to make that slot in nicely. But yeah, no, I think that's it, actually. This was a bit of a shorter one. I actually think this is the shortest script I've done. It's very close to Saleen's, I know that. It's either, like, just shorter or just longer. Which in a way was nice. I think it's good to not, dump multiple hour-long videos about this kind of thing. Anyway, I think that's all good, done, gone. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you around for the Veil analysis in a couple of months. I'm not sure. I haven't started writing it yet. This is one of the few times where I've actually got the footage beforehand, which is great. Yeah, I'm not sure what style I want to go for Veils yet, but hey, we'll see, right? We'll see. So again, one final thank you so much for watching. I guess if you're watching this one and you haven't seen the Hounds video, I'll link it here. I don't know whether I might put it in the iCard or whatever back when I said that thing about checking the video out during the essay, but I'll also have it here in the end card, end screen thing. Yeah. What is this? This is the fourth time I'm going to say thank you so much for watching. God, it's the Let's Player in me, damn. Yeah. See you guys, around, I guess. Goodbye!